Well, Patrick Hanlon has told me that this is going to be the best event in the world. So no pressure at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in South Africa, but very early in the morning where Patrick is. I'm Arya Kelman, and this is an Arena Events presentation. We're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and we're live on the microsite as well. Like I said, it's the best event in the world. You've seen a lot up until now, but this is a groundbreaking moment. We're talking this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're joining us from, about creating a meaningful brand. And there's probably never been a more meaningful time to have this conversation than right now amidst the global pandemic that is COVID-19. And so joining us live from the US this afternoon, we are very privileged to have with us Patrick Hanlon, who is dynamic, a visionary leader, and the founder, of course, of PrimalBranding.co, which is a part of Thinktopia. Now, Patrick is going to be very upset that I name drop like this, but he consults for some massively impressive Fortune 500 companies, the likes of Google, Microsoft, Levi's, Experian, Kraft, Johnson & Johnson, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And his book, Primal Branding, has become required reading at YouTube. And this afternoon, we're going to really get a strong insight into what it is that makes him this profound leader in the space that he is. He's a global TEDx speaker and operates the global PRIMAL.LIVE platform. So it's very early in the morning. So let's say hello to Patrick. And Patrick, you're not going to disclose your location, but I do know you have a guitar with you because you were strumming some stuff on the guitar for us a little earlier.
This is the guitar cave. Yes.
Sounds like a great place to be in lockdown, a guitar cave.
It is. It's better. I'm better off than some people. Yes. That's fortunate for me. Yeah. I happened to stumble into the cave here a couple months ago, actually. And so I was thinking this morning, I've been working since 2002 when I started Thinktopia. We've been working remotely since then. And all we needed was the internet and a PDF. So thank God for the PDF and the telephone, of course. And we were able to work remotely with teams all over the world, actually, at that time. And so some of us are going, what's the big deal? But I understand it's unusual for a lot of people, and maybe even a hardship for some. So, and that's why we wanted to do this, and that's what makes this the best event in the world, because this is sort of a prequel. I'm going to talk about it. Sort of a prequel to the Future of Media event that I was going to attend in July, but that event has been pushed off to October now. And so I thought, why wait? And when people get off of quarantine and so forth, companies, I mean, the governments have been telling companies which ones are essential and so forth. And I think as a result of that, some companies might be determining which personnel, staff are essential, employees are essential. And I think that the companies themselves are going to have to start immediately, accelerate immediately to build their businesses back up. And they're going to need the tools how to do that. And Primal is probably the fastest way to get there. And people who come back and understand from furlough or whatever they've been doing will discover that perhaps unfortunately their positions have been turned into contract positions, or they're suddenly freelance and have to become entrepreneurs, which might be even more uncomfortable than quarantine. And so they can use this methodology as well. And so we thought it was important to get it out there. We just had an event like this in Europe. I think 3 weeks ago. We're going to have another one in Mexico. We're going to do it in Brazil. We're going to do it in London and around the world, China. So we're very excited about this.
From Patrick's cave to the world, I think that's a really strong word, is unpredictable. This is an incredibly unpredictable time, and I think that's a good note for me to hand over to you. Remember, if you have any questions for Patrick, we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this, so you can just pop your questions on Facebook, on YouTube, or if you're watching on the microsite as well, there's a space to put your questions in. So Patrick, I'm going to catch up with you after I've soaked in all this wisdom in the best event in the world that you're about to give us. So on that note, over to you from the cave.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks, Arya. See you on the other side. Let's see if we can get going here. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. There are really two things that this is about. One of them is that two takeaways that this is about. One is that it's about how to build belief systems. And the overriding notion for that is that your audience creates your brand, not you. And that's a flip of the pyramid. And the other second thing is that this is all about taking something that's essentially meaningless and making it meaningful. That is to say that your product, your service, is essentially meaningless until you surround it with meaning. So what primal branding does is really help you fill in the blanks of how things become meaningful for us as human beings. So thanks for coming. The way this works is we're currently in the introduction phase, obviously. I'm going to take you through primal branding. We'll have a Q&A at the end, as Trevor said. And you can ask any question. Please jot down your questions. I think there's a chat for you to do that. And I want to thank everyone from the Future of Media. Jade Fleischman has been incredibly helpful. Arya is here too. Martina is on my side. Has been helping out for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks and more. So as Arya said, I have a book called Primal Branding. It has been required reading at YouTube, which means if you want to become certified at YouTube creator, certified as a YouTube creator, you had to read Primal Branding. So when you go into YouTube, you'll find lots of videos around it. What I just shared with you is the old cover. Just last month, Simon & Schuster, the publisher, released this new cover. So this is what you should be looking for. The net effect of this is of primal branding is to build advocacy, and which means word of mouth, because people don't believe what you have to tell them so much. They don't always believe what you have to tell them, but they do believe what their peers say about you. So we'll rock on that. So oops, sorry. I have the world's most sensitive laptop. It's relatively new. So this is the book cover, what it looks like, and this is what it looks like when you're holding one in your hand. Someone just sent me this yesterday. So it is required reading at YouTube. The Primal Branding is in 7 languages. This is the Korean edition. Editor in Korea sent me a photo of their copy of the book, and I didn't realize that they sold sticky notes there in Korea until he sent me that. We've used primal branding all over the world. Initially, this was a brand new idea, a new theory, if you will, about branding. And we have been able to turn it into something that you can activate and actually employ. And we have tested it all over the world. We were invited in 2008 by Baidu and Huawei to come to China. And this is a photograph from that session there. We've also been to India and everywhere. Primal is taught at colleges and universities around the world. It's even homeschooled. Someone sent this photograph of their kitchen table, and Primal is stacked up there just with Blue Moon and everything else. So I only get these because people either send them to me or someone finds them on the web. So I'm always astonished at what's happening out there with my book. This is what I mentioned, that we work all over the world. This is a session that we did in Mumbai for a fashion product, and these young women are telling us what they think about young women in the world and what they think about fashion and what they thought about the brand that we were working on. So this is just a cross section of some of the things that we've been doing. This is I was in Johannesburg 2 years ago, and looking forward to coming again in October. We have our own events as well. This is Primal Live in Los Angeles. We had Primal Live in New York City and elsewhere. I also spoke at VidCon. VidCon is a major YouTube event. It's not run by YouTube, but it's run by YouTubers, which makes it even more interesting in some ways. Over 70,000 people, I think, attend this event. So it's like CES or Comic-Con or anything else. So the way that we look at the world is that brands are belief systems. If you ask 100 people out there what a brand is, generally you'll get 100 different answers. And I thought that this was kind of ridiculous, because in marketing and advertising, there are metrics on everything, and from SKUs to budgets to whatever. And the brand is the thing that all companies try to become, because having a brand makes their company worth a multiple, many times more than than actual book value of assets and buildings and materials and so forth. So I had a client problem. I felt that the client was being, today we would say they were not being authentic. We didn't have that word. We didn't use the word authentic that way back then in 2001. I just thought that in my gut that there was a problem. I was a global creative director. I wrote Super Bowl commercials and worked in advertising on major brands in New York City. And I just thought in my gut, or felt in my gut, that there was something wrong. And so people that time, Google and Starbucks and some other brands who did not advertise were suddenly coming on the scene and making, everyone was talking about them. They're very buzzy. And in advertising, we would be in a meeting selling an advertising campaign, and someone, the CEO, president, would pop up and say, well, why should we be spending $30 million on this advertising campaign when Starbucks doesn't advertise and everyone's going to Starbucks? Google doesn't advertise, everyone's going to Google. What's going on? And so there was never a great answer for that. Someone would come up with something. But at the end of the day, although people were talking about Nike tribes and the Apple cult and things like that, no one really had an answer. And so I had some time to figure it out, and I figured out a construct that I think is as old as humankind and has somehow potentially been lost. I don't know, who knows? But anyway, it's a construct that is fundamentally human, and I think should be taught in the same way that we're taught how to count from 1 to 10, or we learn our ABCs. So brands are belief systems. Once you create a belief system, you attract others who share your beliefs. You can do this for people, you can do this for places, and you can do it for things. And oftentimes those things are products and services. All belief systems have 7 things that help to make them believable. And once you bundle these 7 things together, you ping both the emotional and the rational parts of our brain. That just helps things make sense. And when you make more sense than the person standing next to you or the product on the shelf standing next to yours, when you make more sense, that means preference, and preference means sales. So all belief systems have these 7 pieces. They have a creation story. How did you start? They have a creed. What do you believe in? What's your purpose? They have icons that identify you. They have rituals. How do we use you? There's a lexicon, special group of words that identify your group or tribe, your brand. And then there's a group called the Nonbelievers, which is very important, and leader. And I'm going to take you through these one by one. So all the brands down here below have all 7 of these pieces, and others out in the world. So all belief systems start out with a creation myth, a creation story of how you got started. And that story is not legacy, it's not history, it's more about legacy. So we all know about Apple getting started in the garage by 2 guys named Steve. Amazon was started by Jeff Bezos and his wife. They came up with a business plan as they traveled across the country in the United States. Went from the East Coast to the West Coast to get funding, get their money. There's a story about Phil Knight selling from Nike, selling shoes at swap meets from the trunk of his car. And oftentimes in marketing and advertising and elsewhere, we go, well, of course Apple can do that, they're Apple. Or of course Amazon can do that, they're Apple. Of course Nike can do that, but I can't do that. And the fact is that you can. It's just about where you want to set your horizon. All three of these brands that we just talked about started, well, at least in my lifetime, and they started from nothing. Apple started in a garage. Um, Nike was started when Phil used to sell his shoes out of the trunk of the car, but the real story is that Bill Bowerman made a waffle sole using his wife's waffle iron, and poured the rubber into the waffle iron and created the first prototype for Nike soles. I don't know about you guys, but if I was caught in the middle of the night pouring rubber into my wife's waffle iron, there'd be trouble. So all of these companies started from very humble beginnings, and it was just having a dream, having the right amount of luck and tenacity and perseverance. Samsung, who we all know, started by selling rice to China, and started here with people carting around rice. So into a global company, billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar company. So they now have 80 companies, I believe. So it depends on what your dream is. And then, of course, coronavirus, there also is not a brand, but it's a concept. And even though it's a horrible one, and it too has a creation story, right? Started in China. How you talk about these 7 pieces of code is a problem of media or opportunity, excuse me, for media. And the social network was Facebook's creation story, right? So we'll talk about that in a minute. So once we know where you're from, we want to know what you're about. All belief systems have a creed. They have whether it's one word or a set of words, they have a group of words that gives them the reason to believe. And whether it's just do it, whether it's think different for Apple, there's a new brand out called Allbirds, which is a footwear company. Not a Nike necessarily, but more leisure shoes. Better things in a better way. They're made from, incidentally, from extra fine merino wool, which some people in South Africa might relate to, called Allbirds. Patagonia is often pointed to as being a famous purpose brand. Again, I mean, they started out also about the same time Nike did and Apple did, and forging big iron spikes that they could pound into the side of a mountain. So, but now these days they are huge and global, and are often pointed to as a purpose-driven brand. To the extent that they now have a business library. And if you go into a Patagonia store in some locations, you'll find this business library. If you have not read Let My People Go Surfing, the book on the lower left there, I would point you to that right away. So the creed and understanding where you are from and what you want to do is very important, and it's something that requires some time sometimes to figure out. We worked with a brand, gaming brand, which is already billion dollar franchise, and we worked with them they talked for 3 hours. These were young guys, all in their 20s. They all had Porsches and Ferraris, and they talked for 3 hours, 5, 6, 7 of them, about why they came to work in the morning. Some of them just wanted to make the best damn games on the planet. Others wanted to become Disney, and so forth. And so trying to figure out who you are brings up some interesting questions. One of them might be, do banks make customers more secure, or do customers make banks feel more secure? And just how you look at things and your perspective may change, and how you frame things is certainly important. So what do we believe in? Once we figure out what our creation story is, answer where where we're coming from, what do we believe in. We have to be able to identify you. The Internship was a movie about Google's creed and who is fit for Google. And then, so we have to identify you. Icons. All belief systems have a set of that fills in the sensory spaces of what we look like, what we taste like, what we feel like, what we sound like, and so forth, and smells. And icons are these quick, instant, um, spontaneous sensations that we get, like when you open the door and walk into a room. How does that feel? Uh, whether you're walking into a building or you're looking to buy a house or walking into a friend's house, you instantly know if you want to be there or not, or whether it's welcoming or not. One of the major icons is a flag. So we identify nations. We use logos to identify our brands. And apparently many logos come in circles. So it's a good place, the circle's a good place to start. But in branding, we always think, well, if we just did our branding, um, we're often told, and so we ask, well, what did you do? And we changed our logo and we changed our website. And yes, websites are important. Yes, the logo is important, but they're only one piece of the whole picture. And when we go onto a website, yes, that identifies you. If you don't have a website today in 2020, you really don't exist, right? You're not in business yet. But there are many types of icons, and I, each one of these is important for establishing your brand and helping us to identify your brand. In the olden times, people wore shields or they had pennants, and in wartime, we followed the shields and the banners that were flying so we would know where our friends were. And today we also use logos, icons to identify who our friends are. So Coca-Cola, obviously, the Coca-Cola red, the Coca-Cola script, Heinz, a great trick today, or mind game, I guess, is to, with a lot of brands, a lot of companies, is to figure out how far they can deconstruct their logo so it's not identifiable anymore. So Heinz has taken out all the copy and just use their shield outline there. And of course, the French fry. Artists also deconstruct, or actually they take different icons and mash them all together again. But we're not going to go there today. Logo types, logos and typography, typography is also iconic. Graphic design is iconic. This is for Mac Beauty. Product design is also iconic, of course. This is an electric airplane designed by JDXP Joe Doucet in New York City. He's one of our partners. And they also designed this face shield for coronavirus, trying to make shields more fashionable. Package design is iconic, and we're all happy to receive this little box. But also what Apple, I think, made famous was when you open up that box, when you get it home, the inside of the package was as dramatic as the product itself. And a part of making it a joyful, part of making purchasing an Apple computer a joyous experience. And this is the inside of the box for Allbirds, the shoes made from extra fine merino wool that I just mentioned earlier. And I was not expecting this and was delighted to open it up and find all of this inside, as well as, and the shoes were in there too, by the way. So paying attention to packaging. A lot of people are doing this because they're being drop shipped products and so forth. And I'm not sure how much of that is going on in South Africa, but it's all over the place in the United States. Tats are iconic. They identify a tribe, if you will. And move on. spaces can also be iconic. We know that this space is not a living room, or maybe it could be, but it's not. And it's retail space, and the color and the windows and all of that help us define what that is, help our brains define what this is. And um, icons are hardwired to our brains, which makes them very important. They are hardwired because they make us, they help us understand if we're safe or not. So if we hear the smell of smoke, we know we're in trouble. If we hear a twig snap in the woods or the jungle, we're on alert. And so icons are hardwired to our brains, even when we are living in a metropolitan area like Johannesburg or Cape Town or wherever we are. We know through design. So when architects and environmental designers design spaces, the icons are very important. We know that this is not a bedroom or a living room or even a retail space because of the iconography. And whereas this, of course, is. And I hope some of you are sitting there right now. Icons are also products. As I mentioned earlier, Lego used their icons, has used their icons very successfully to create films. And when we're designing computer games, first-person games, we use we use the icons to create user experiences. And we've worked with several gaming companies, and from Halo to Call of Duty, etc. And moving from the wireframe here. Yesterday, I was going through trying to find some photos for today, and there was a history there of how far we've come since, well, in just the last 10 years, from 2010 to now, which has been phenomenal. So it's incredible. So icons, when we design the homepage and so forth, we think that we understand how homepages work, but here's some experimental, thoughtful design, new designs coming in, and to expand upon the grid when we're working with user experiences. This is another design that's out there. And so once we have become used to an icon, we understand that we're safe. And then it goes from being fresh to being understood, and then it becomes boring. And so that's how fads die, right? Something is exciting and gotta have it, and then everyone has it, and it becomes ordinary, and then it it dissipates to becoming boring and old and tired. And that happens, as we know, with brands. And so it's our opportunity as those who design and build and help excite brands to keep our icons refreshed. That's why you see so many companies refreshing their logos when they have nothing else to do. Or it seems like they have nothing else to do. Redoing their logo is a trigger that says there might be something else going on exciting with that brand. So in most cases. Once we know where you're from and what you're about, and we'll be able to identify you, icons and rituals work closely together. This session this morning is a ritual, but we're all watching it on our phones or on our computers or laptops, which are icons. And so rituals are really our beliefs in action. And I always say, if you want a good ritual, get a hug. If you want a bad one, not to badmouth anyone, but call your bank or call your credit card company. And so repeated positive interactions are really our objective here, which is something that Starbucks made clear. As they transformed the ritual of having coffee in the morning from having it in your kitchen to going someplace in the morning to have coffee. They also innovated in terms of the language. We have to, we'll get into this in a second, but ice grande skinny decaf latte. if that was your order. There are 10,000 different options for that. And it was not just a employee behind the counter, it was a barista. And the sizes of the cups, you know, the tall, grande, and what, venti, and so forth. So they did a lot of work. They were in business for, I think, 10 or 20 years before they even decided to start going from Seattle and heading east across the American continent until they hit New York City and then around the world. I remember moving to New York City during this, and I had moved to New York from Chicago, and Chicago had just started getting Starbucks. So there were a few Starbucks in Chicago, 10, I would say. And when I hit New York City, there was one Starbucks shop in New York City. Luckily, it was about 6 blocks away, so it made the trek over there, over to Broadway, Times Square. Working out is a ritual, as companies like Peloton know all too well. And wearing face masks are a ritual. I pulled this off of a Chinese news service a couple weeks ago. And smartphones are clearly ritualistic. And just think of all the different things that smartphones have replaced, from maps to planning trips to watching movies to even having events like this, TikTok and so forth. So many things have changed. I mean, 20 years ago, if you had a calendar company, you had pretty much a secure job. And you might be asking, what's a printed calendar? So we started out a minute ago talking about websites, homepages, and all that. And as they become, one of the things that brands need to think about doing is to think about the other things that our audiences are interested in. And WeTransfer is a company that helps you, it's like Dropbox, helps you transfer files. And they have just recently, in the last year or two, understood that the people transferring files are in the creative businesses, fashion, film, advertising, marketing, and so forth. And as they realize that, they have started doing some interesting things with their own website to help build upon that. So the last shot was about fashion. This one is about film and Winona Ryder. They're also obtaining partnering with other companies who share the same values that you do, or I should say, put better, that share the same values that your audience does, is important. So WeTransfer and Squarespace have become partners, and so has WeTransfer with MailChimp. And so they want to be, so those companies are a cluster, a tribe unto themselves, if that makes sense, and by doing this. And so they're really smart way of understanding who their audience is, who their customers are, who their tribe is, helps them find other partners out there in the universe that their audience is interested in, might be interested in. Very important. Contrasted with Hightail, which became OpenText, and which gives a very basic, transactional description of what their business is. So WeTransfer and OpenText or Hightail are in the same business, but look at the difference here. Who would you go with? So feelings of kinship and association and affiliation way surpass the usual product features and benefits portfolio when it comes to preference. Here is something I'm always interested in how rituals change out. And so Airco is actually a vodka company, which quickly transformed with coronavirus to um, to, to be an alcohol company. So this is a spray, so you can help sanitize. So it's pure alcohol, and using the same bottle. And then another ritual is reviews um, and ratings. And as I mentioned earlier, people don't believe what you have to say about yourself. They believe in what others have to say about you. Or maybe I didn't say that, but I'm saying it now. So that your 5 stars is way more important probably than most of your advertising efforts and marketing efforts. And so I used to write Super Bowl spots, as I mentioned, and these days I'm saying if you want to great seats at the Super Bowl, then by all means do a commercial. But if you want, you would probably be better served if you had 3 stars to try to get 4 stars, or 5 stars. If you have 4 stars, get 5 stars, and push your ratings, because that's at the end of the day what your customers, your audiences are looking for. And so there you go. So once we know where you're from, what you're about, we can identify you. We know how to use you, and what you're for. We look at all belief systems have unique language that surrounds them. We act alike and we talk alike. And so whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or a marketing person, or you do computer code, or you write books, or you are a plumber or an electrician, or work behind the counter at Starbucks, we all have our own words that we use. And or you play chess, we all of those have different words. You play soccer, and if you don't know the words, you're not a part of that community. So when I was in Africa a couple of years ago, or last year, went on Google and saw all the different languages that Google's offered in. So at the national scale, if you don't know French, you're not going to become part of the French community, are you? So in South Africa, we have all of these languages that are mingled together, and and how well you know them kind of dictates where you fit within the society or the hierarchy. If you can speak very well, then you usually are in a better position than those who cannot. Taki is are 2 words that are known by billions of people, and the rest of us are just kind of left out. And so when I presented this same slide at VidCon in Los Angeles, half of the room was bouncing up and down, dancing, and the other half was staring at me blankly, as I assume might be the case right now. Taki at that time anyway, had 1.37 billion views. It's a music video, and with a whole bunch of performers in it, entertainers in it, Selena Gomez and others, and was the hit for last summer, the hit of the summer a year ago. And MailChimp. So words, can exclude us too. And understanding the words helps you become a part of the group. MailChimp, which we talked about earlier, are 2 really ridiculous words put together, or 2 words, very noble words put together in a ridiculous fashion. And understanding that, just how badass their words, their name is, they very confidently went out into the marketplace. A lesser team of people probably would have sought out a different name. So, but they were very confident and put out this campaign, which is on the subways of New York City and elsewhere. They also did TV commercials around this, all playing off their name of MailChimp, with MailShrimp, KaleLimp, JailBlimp, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to be a part of the community, you have to know the words. Being confident about your word set, establishing a new word set that people have to learn, just helps people, draw people into your community. The next piece is really important. So all belief systems have a group that does not want to share your beliefs. and they believe something else. They want to sit in the other part of the restaurant, the other part of the cafeteria, the other part of the stadium. Um, uh, this can be compared with soccer teams, by the way. So speaking of sitting at the other part of the stadium, uh, there's the home team and the opponents, right? And the opponents are definitely the non-believers. But understanding who you are and what you're all about is incredibly important. And what we have learned over time is that there's always going to be a contrarian group. In marketing, so often what we believe is that our product is so damn cool that, of course, everyone wants to buy it. And the only reason that they're not buying it is because they haven't heard about us yet. And that may be true, but it can also be a trap. And if you are able to acknowledge that, um, yeah, there are some people out there who are not going to use us or want us, you buy yourself a lot of freedom, because you can go after your zealots. And we divide the world up into zealots and potential zealots. We focus on our zealots. We find out what makes us sticky for them, what attaches them to us, and we build on that for our clients. And then we look at the low-hanging fruit, which are the potential zealots who may have tried us once, twice, many times, but haven't quite stuck, are not quite to the zealot level yet. And we assess that. You can assess that through either number of purchases, amount of purchases, volume, or there are other metrics as well. And it's different for each company and for each category. Depends on what category you're in. But we assess who the zealots are, and then who the potential zealots are. We find out what are the friction points for the potential zealots, which might be price, it might be distribution, they just can't find us, might be other factors. But we try to remove those friction points and try to move them up to becoming zealots. And just making that world so binary, black and white, we are able to create huge growth, double-digit growth for a lot of companies. So you may remember the Mac versus PC campaign from several years ago, YouTube versus Netflix. These are both electric cars, the new Mercedes, and then of course the Tesla. Some more non-believers here. I had the good fortune to ride back on the airplane from Amsterdam, from Europe, down to Johannesburg with the Springboks when they won the national or the international championship a couple of years ago, and that was fun. You can have different. Here are more non-believers potentially, and then for all of those Game of Thrones fans, ice and fire. Of course, they need to be socially separated these days. And so understanding who your non-believers is incredibly important. So the Coke and Pepsi, the cola wars existed. And one of the other great advantages of understanding who does not want to be with you, if you can find that group that does not want to drink cola, you're able to create something else. And that something else might be Red Bull, it might be water, it might be milk, it might be might be orange juice, might be any number of things. But if you can identify that group that doesn't want sugar, you can create sugar-free. If you can identify a group that doesn't want gas guzzling SUVs, you can create electric cars. If you can identify a group of people who don't want to live in a house with gardens and everything, you can create fabulous townhomes for them. So understanding who the non-believers are, understanding that there is a market out there, a different kind of audience, oftentimes open up white spaces and new opportunities. And of course, there you go. So the opportunity is not a lot of times in performance marketing, we're trying to make that quick dollar, and because we're trying to move the growth measures and so forth. But the opportunity isn't just to drive people to your site. The real opportunity, that's a short-term goal. The real opportunity is to drive people to your mindset. Get them, how do they get them thinking the same way we do. We want the people who think the way that we do, and we want more of them. And there are always more of them out there. And sometimes we haven't found them yet. Sometimes they haven't heard about us yet. But if you go after the uh, identify who your zealots are, and you use network theory, and which is friends of friends of friends, you will find them eventually. So that is our goal, and is oftentimes the opportunity. So once we know where you're from, we know what you're about, we're able to identify you, we know how to use you, we know how we talk about ourselves, we know what we are and what we're not, never want to become. All belief systems have a leader. And this is an identifiable person who set out in order to recreate the world at large according to their own point of view. Uh, at the national level, of course, these can be political people, political leaders. We have business leaders like Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and so forth. We have religious and spiritual leaders, the Dalai Lama. We have leaders of political and social movements, whether it's Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela or Greta Thunberg. Uh, and we have, cultural leaders. And I asked for, you may have your own cultural leader for this slide here. I asked, and this is, Benang was what was handed to me. So, and then of course, the president. And the leader might be you. If you want to start your own brand and become a celebrity, or you just want to find your place in the world, you can use this, excuse me, you can use this same structure, the same construct. Where are you from? Who are you? What do you believe in? How do you want to look and dress yourself up? And what are the things that you like to do, rituals, the way you speak, and what you're not and don't want to become, figure that out, and then who you are as a person. So what we do is we deconstruct brands according to this construct, primal branding. Here's just a cross section of some of them. Apple, of course, the creation story started in the garage. Think different. The icons, whether it's the phone or the pods or everything, the Genius Bar when that existed, the rituals, sacred words, iMac, iPhone, iCal, this, that, and the other thing. Nonbelievers. The list of non-believers gets larger rather than shorter, but PCs, droids, Netflix, etc., depending which portion of Apple business you want to talk about. Leader, Steve Jobs, and now Tim Cook. You can do the same thing with Samsung. You can do the same thing with Beats by Dre. This Beats by Dre was is the only brand that has gone from 0 to $1 billion in 3 years. And you go, well, how do they do that? And yes, they had a lot of luck. They were started by two people who are already famous, Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. But they had instinct, they had timing, they had some fortuitous luck at the Olympics, the London Olympics back in 2012, where they handed out the headphones, and because the headphones were red, they stood out, and the players wore the headphones when they were being interviewed by the news people, and they also the company had a Beats Lounge that was outside of the Golden Perimeter. So people went there because there were celebrities hanging out there, and also the team players were out there. And so there were a lot of citizens going there as well, just to stargaze, which was lucky for them. Shoma Josie. Well, this will probably be like talkie, but Shoma Josie is a popular new star, and you wonder how she became so popular, but you can also fill in, all her 7 pieces of primal code, which helps her to become a star. You can do the same thing with Las Vegas, places, New York City, um, other places around the world, and the United States of America. You can do this for nations. And this is how we build nations as human beings. And you can do the same thing for coronavirus. I don't know how many of you saw the piece that I wrote a couple weeks ago about coronavirus. But the sad thing here is that these blanks were not filled in as quickly as we might have wanted to do this. Might have wanted to happen. This, as I said in the beginning, this is how we take something that's meaningless and help it become meaningful. Well, it did not, coronavirus did not become meaningful enough to enough people soon enough, which has put a lot of people and countries in jeopardy. But be that as it may, this helps to explain how coronavirus became viral. Excuse the pun. So we could even suggest that the foundations of our society are based on the notion that two people believe in each other so strongly that they're willing to commit the rest of their lives together. So the creation story that comes up, how did you guys meet? The concept here being romantic love. How did you guys meet? The creed, I love you back, the icons, the rings, flowers, chocolates, cards, and so forth, Valentine's Day, and so forth. The rituals, dating, going steady, engagement, marriage, Valentine's Day. Again, rituals and icons work together. So the card itself is iconic. The fact that you're giving it to someone on Valentine's Day is a ritual. The words, sacred words, I love you, honey, Pookie, darling, dear, but also the words the experiences that you share together. So you start coming up with your own private code as a couple based upon the events and experiences that you've shared together. Remember that time when, and you both remember and you both nod your heads. And then there are the non-believers, single people, old boyfriends, old girlfriends, old spouses, and so forth. Someone once shouted out at the talk I gave my mother-in-law. A woman shouted that. And then the leaders, one or both of you, depending who does the checkbook. So we can ask ourselves, about, as some of you may have been doing mentally, what's my creation story? What's our creed? What are our icons and so forth? And it's anyone's guess, I guess, whether you can fill in all the blanks for, some of our popular brands, Vodafone, Woolworths, MTN, et cetera, et cetera. And so the challenge is, first of all, filling in the blanks here. And by the way, I reconstructed this or deconstructed this, reverse engineered this to get here. And I looked at all the popular brands, and my first thing was, well, they all have a logo. And and looked at brands and wondered, why do we believe in them? Why do we care about them? It wasn't even about belief at that time. It was, why do we care about them? And started identifying all these 7 pieces. The question that always surfaces is which ones, I get the whole 7 thing, Pat, thanks so much. Which one of these is the most important? And so the answer to that is that's the key, is that they are all equally important, and it's the construct that is the most important thing of all 7 of them. And the fact that there are 7 makes it complicated and complex, but human beings are complex too. They're complicated creatures, aren't we? And that's why there are so few powerful brands. There are 100 kinds of blue jeans, but we can only name three brands, right? And so there are 100 kinds of cars. So we have lots of choices, but how do you become the choice? Usually it's because you're a brand. unless you have a price item. And so we try to fill in the blanks. Yes, you can be a valuable company, $100 million company, without filling all of these blanks, but that would have to be a low interest category. And once someone comes along that has all of these blanks filled in, you will be swept off the shelves. So you can do this without, you can become successful without filling in all these blanks, but you are also incredibly vulnerable. And by the way, it costs no money to do this. We did a project a couple of years ago in Africa. We helped a conservancy in South Africa. No, excuse me, not in South Africa, in Kenya. We helped a conservancy in Kenya, the Nobosho Conservancy in Nobosho. We filled in all the blanks for them. And just by doing that and calling in some favors, we won the gold award for ecotourism in Africa in 2016 with no money, zero budget, no marketing person, etc. So it costs no money to do this. Of course, money helps because once you fill in all the blanks, you want to be able, these become your points of communication, and that does cost money. So that's why the big brands have an advantage. But it costs no money to set this into motion, and everything else is a plus game. So once you know what your 7 pieces of code are, you want to distribute these across social, digital, and traditional media. And you want your audiences to experience you in positive ways all the time. And so on a daily basis, I would say. And as they go across their social, digital, experiential, traditional media ecosystem, you're filling in the pieces of primal code, because that's how you become relevant. That's how you maintain relevance. That's how you retain your relevance, and you stay buzzy. And so this is incredibly important, and this is what we're going to be talking about in the Future of Media conference when October comes along. So this is a construct why we believe. That's why we believe in people. It's why we believe in places. It's why we believe in things, products and services, even constructs like gravity or Bitcoin or something called coronavirus. It's also why we believe in each other. This is how we build communities. It's how we build culture. We use Primal to build internal culture inside of corporations, companies. We use it for their products and services. We use this to help soldiers returning from war who are moving from a military community back into the civilian community, to help them make that transition. Once people learned that we were using Primal for that, we were told that, well, this would work well for people coming out of prison. It would work well for abused spouses. So it's been used in all sorts of ways that I never dreamed of. I could not foresee. I did not foresee when I first came up with this. So this is how we move from being meaningless, excuse me, to becoming meaningful. And so much so that in some cases, people are willing to stand in front of a tank because they believe so strongly, or they stand in front of a bullet, which people do every day. So thanks so much for your time. Our thinking is based upon all of our partners that we've had over the last client partners we've had over the last 20 years. So thanks you guys for being on the planet. And if you like what you've been listening to, what you've been hearing, you can continue the journey and level up. Check out our website, PRIMAL.LIVE.com. And the one thing I would ask you to do is, if you like this, please tell 3 friends, because that's what network theory is all about.
Fantastic.
So, Q&A.
That's it. Patrick, thank you so much. You inspired me to pop on my Patagonia t-shirt. Do you have a
Excellent.
reference to them?
It works. Tell 3 friends.
Such a huge fan of that brand, and some incredible insights. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to just get straight into some of the questions that have been coming through on the live stream so we can really tackle exactly what it is that everybody wants to know.
Sure.
So I'm going to kick it off here with a question from Tom Anderson. And I think that this is specifically in relation to COVID-19. Tom asks, will big brands be able to shift their strategies based on the current environment, or will they just stick to their existing identities? Can they?
I think that's going to really depend, Tom, on the case-by-case basis. I think every industry is going to be different. I think when we come out of this, I've heard people talk about there's definitely going to be a before coronavirus and after coronavirus thing going on, like there was when iPhone came on. That telecommunications talks about before iPhone and after iPhone, right? And how it changed things. So I think that there are certainly different sensitivities that we've gained through this experience. We've learned that what's essential in our lives, I think, and then we've learned what we can live without, I think. And so we've also learned that we've dropped into something. This has accelerated a lot of things that were maybe a little more tenuous, like meetings like this, going online and having huge meetings with, meetings that are have a wider audience than 2 people, 3 people, or whatever. I think we have 200 or 300 people on the line right now, and so that we're sharing this with. I think that has that switched the toggle, a couple of weeks ago when people had no other recourse. And that's how reality TV started, because there was the actors union in the US had a strike in summer, which was the time when everyone was producing not only TV shows, but also commercials. And so they thought that they would force companies um, to acquiesce to their demands, to the actors' demands. Instead, everyone went everywhere else, which at the time was an option, but it's one that they didn't really want to take. And as a result, um, we wound up with lower costing. So they didn't use actors, right? They used real people, and that was the start of reality TV. And they just discovered that it cost, next to nothing. So they cut the cost. So that's a lesson that might be taking place here as well.
I mean, we've spent a lot of time. We're going to get to Tanya's question in a second, but just talk to me for a second about acting from sort of a strategic space versus a panicked space at the moment. I think a lot of people are acting a little bit out of sort of fear and not following the guidelines and following the blueprints that do exist in terms of making a brand meaningful, the guidelines you've run us through, the principles you've run us through. So just a word on sort of ascertaining if you're operating from a space of fear, or if you're operating from a space of sort of strong strategy, and the importance of operating from a space of strategy.
Yeah. Well, strategy is key, right? And I think that also the framing things is key to strategy. And so I think that you need to you have to work through your metrics, and you have to work, I think the metrics are important. I think that, and when I say metrics, I think I'm thinking about consumer insights and what your audience wants. And those are the metrics that you need to be paying attention to, not necessarily your sales.
Yeah. Powerful answer to that. Tanya has a question. When it comes specifically to youth marketing, should brands speak to the parents paying for the stuff, or to the kids asking for the stuff?
Is that a trick question? I have 6 kids, so this is always a tricky thing to answer. I think that what you should be doing is ascertaining what value you're bringing to the party, and and then building off of that, because I think that's core to becoming meaningful. And once you become meaningful, you are not only meaningful to the kids, but you're meaningful. It's a meaningful part of the family. And so the parents are willing to spend.
Let's unpack that idea of value for a second with this question from Jono. And probably value is the consistent theme running between both of these things. But John is asking, can you suggest some ways of what the marketing differences are between marketing a product and marketing a service? What are the differences in terms of how you would approach marketing a product or service?
From my point of view, there is no difference really. The difference is really,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's uh, um, a difference that we've manufactured. Also, I don't think there's any difference between B2B and B2C. And so it's all about making something meaningful. And all of the other things were constructed, those differentiations that you were pointing out there, um, have been manufactured by marketers and are really bullshit. And so I would step outside of that and the um, the BS and think about how to make things meaningful and how do we create meaning as human beings. And that's part of the whole awakening that happened for me, because I was a professional marketer and had been for a long time, and global creative director on brands and so forth. And so what I realized was that, hey, we're doing this all wrong. Um, Others, I have my own set of non-believers and pagans, and so that's what I've been up against. But this has been validated all over the world, and great successes a lot of times. So the I would think less about those kinds of differentiations and how do I become meaningful to the real mission today is try to develop a group around you, whether you call them fans or consumers or customers, but create a group around you who become so passionate about your success, they're willing to create it themselves.
Yeah,
That's the
and you
mission.
spoke about that in your talk, saying that brands are a belief system. I want to pick up on a second, a little bit further on what you're saying, just unpacking it a little bit more. Do you feel like there's just far too much treating the symptom versus treating the cause? Because certainly what you've spoken about this afternoon, your morning, is very much around looking at the cause and really evaluating everything, and taking a strong look at it versus just putting a plaster on something that eventually comes off.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies, I mean, this is kind of human nature too. We try to look at what other people have done successfully and then try to apply it to our own problem or our own opportunities. And that's great. It's great to know what other people are doing, but a lot of times we try to mimic that. And I mean, you have a lot of people going crazy about TikTok right now. Well, I mean, TikTok's it right now. Instagram was it before TikTok. And I don't remember what, Periscope or something before Instagram, right? And so if you keep chasing those things, in the old days, it was Super Bowl spots. In the States, it was getting on NASCAR, or it was, uh, the other racing outlets, or it's sports. I mean, that's kind of the go-to is sports, right? And so we follow those even though it may not be right for us or for our brand. And so you find things. I mean, do you guys have Gatorade in South Africa?
We have like Energade and Lucozade. We
Yeah.
know what it is. The energy
Oh,
drink.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And so that's why today, so we mimic things. That's why today over here in the States, we have Gatorade commercials that look like old 1990s Nike commercials, because they're just trying to imitate Nike. And so the thing is to find your own path and the things that are right for you. Each piece of Primal Code, from creation story all the way to leader, is a point of differentiation. No one's going to have the same creation story. No one's going to have they may have a similar creed, or they may have a similar creation story. The idea might have been written on the back of an envelope, but it was your founder that created it. And that's, you have to find your difference. Your icons may be different, same, only different, but you have to while you're creating the points of differentiation and making everything unique and unto yourself, um, that continues through your story, and you can talk about each one of those things. Each one of those becomes the story. How did you come up with your product development, et cetera, et cetera? And you put that across media and tell the tale. And so that's how you become different, not by seeing what that everyone else is on TikTok and following that, because you become disingenuous then.
It is the scariest place to be, though, to be the first person to do something, but that's why the people that do it are the people that are successful at doing it. It's, again, human truths.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's a question from Nicole, which I think you touched on earlier in terms of when you spoke of meaning. Nicole's asking, would you suggest that brands update their social platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn daily? Or how would you approach how they time that?
Sure. If you can, I would. Yes. And I think that that gets back to the budget thing. If you have the people with money have more ways to go. The former CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at Twitter, likes Primal because he can say, "Oh, we talked about rituals last week. Let's talk about our creation story this week or today," and they can get on with the 33 other things they have to do, that day. And so he likes it. A lot of people, of course, I only get this, I hear about these things, first or second hand, but they like it because it's a system. It's a systematic way of building brands. And for Zeke, the CMO at Twitter, that was his way in. That's what he liked about it, was because it was system. And you can, you think about brands, the big brands, Nike, Apple, and so forth, Amazon. Every day we hear about uh, the new Apple phone. We hear about the Apple stock price. We hear about something new Apple is going to do. We hear about the old phone versus the new phone. We hear about what Tim Cook is doing, or something about Steve Jobs. Well, those probably ping, right? What those are all about. But because it's about the stock price, which is finance, because it's about the new phone versus the old phone, which is about product design, because it's about Tim Cook or Steve Jobs, that's about personality, branding, et cetera. Because they're in separate sectors in our brain, it's not like pinging, repeating the same thing over and over again. And because if we're Apple people, that we opt in. We opt into those messages, and we want those messages. We like those messages. We like hearing about that stuff, and we do hear about it every day. But it's not overwhelming. We like it, and it's reassuring. And it is the company's responsibility in today's world to feed their advocates the correct information, especially in an age of fake news. We want to feed our advocates the correct information. So when a hater or troll comes along and says, Apple sucks, we go, no, they don't suck. As a matter of fact, here's why. And
Yeah.
so that's the company's responsibility. So Nicole, the answer is yes, you should be doing it every day, if you can.
Fantastic. And I'm going to take one last question before we land this and let you have breakfast. Pilile asks, in light of the unavoidable global economic crash, should brands be thinking within the framework of the current economic system or the pre-COVID economic system? I think this is a question in terms of budgets. That advertising marketing is the first thing to go, but should it be?
Yeah, well, that's part of the reason that we're having this event, is because the world will be different. We don't know how much different it will be, and we can only guess at this moment. And there are going to have to be some adaptations. We're going to have to, some companies have to be very agile and pivot into different directions, just to use the proper terminology. But yes, it's going to be a different world. We just don't know in what way. And it's going to be different in one industry. The things in one industry are going to be different than they are in another. So it's going to depend heavily on what industry you are in. and banking is not going to be the same as packaged goods, for example. And distribution supply chains have been disrupted and so forth. So your go-to-market strategies are going to have to reflect that, and you're going to have to be very agile. You're going to have to think differently, perhaps, and you're going to so hopefully, our hope is that Primal will become a useful tool set for people as they do adjust. And it may be not be a part of your total plan, but if you just think about the non-believers. Here's what we're not, what we don't want to become. Here's what we don't want to do. We don't want to act this way because this is not who we are or what we're all about. We would never do that.
I think that's quite a strong note to end it on, to the marketeers and the advertisers at the moment who are, as I think we all are, a little bit scared, really, of what the hangover of all of this kind of looks like, and what the impacts are of this, and what after COVID actually looks like, because there is so much safety and security in, booking the media that you may have for the past year, or representing your brand the way that you may have for the past year, or marketing the same products that you have for the past 4 or 5 years. People that pull in and out of work every day and tend to sometimes do almost the same thing, that are quite scared and sort of quite jilted by all of this. What is your message in terms of embracing the fear, and kind of getting excited about the potential outcome that comes with such a massive shift?
Yeah, I don't think it's about embracing the fear. I think it's about embracing the notion that we have to be flexible and we have to be adaptive. And if you're thinking about innovating before, this might be a great time to do it. And that innovation may be, it might be in your message. It might be in identifying, most of the time people don't think about their brands. They just think about the business and the asset sheet. And times like this are great times to reassess where we are, where we want to go, set that horizon line for ourselves. And who we are and what we want to be is important. And people are going to be looking to our leaders to help them determine who they are and what audience they want to become a part of.
Patrick, very insightful and futuristic words coming from someone that is speaking to us from a cave. So there is an irony in that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd love to close out with something that you said when you were taking us through the presentation, that a brand is not a logo, advertising, or a website, but rather a community wired together in a common belief system. And that's a beautiful way to think about what we do every day as marketers and advertisers. Patrick, it's been so great connecting with you. Are there any sort of final contact details you want to just re-emphasize with us, and how to access the Primal platform? And then we will land this.
We're everywhere you want to be. You can go to primalbranding.co, which is our website, or you can go to PRIMAL.LIVE, which is another where we activate and have our own events. We're also spread across Instagram, Facebook, Medium, Forbes. There are articles if you just Google Primal Branding.
And it'll pop
and
up.
Thanks. I want to thank everyone for spending part of their day today, and I hope the rest of the week, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. Hope the rest of the week is great. I hope all of this helps, and hope to see you in October.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's going to be great for us in SA because we have a public holiday coming up on Friday. So it's a long weekend for us. You, though, still have a full Thursday, a full Wednesday, and a full Friday. So good luck to you in your case.
You just had a holiday. Didn't you just have a holiday?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for some people, every day is a holiday now. So holiday's got a new meaning too.
Well, thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks so much there to Patrick Hanlon, who is the visionary founder of PrimalBranding.co, which is a part of Thinktopia. He's the author of Primal Branding and the Social Code. And thank you so much to Arena Events for facilitating this. We'll be back again soon. If you missed any of this, you can catch it on demand on Facebook and on YouTube. And of course, keep it locked to the Red Zone and Financial Mail for more informative and cool events like this. Patrick promised this was the best event in the world, and up until right now at 4:20 on the 29th of April, it has been. But I guarantee you, next time we do this again, it's going to be even better. Myself, Aria Kalman, in my living room. Thank you so much. Cheers.